So just so everybody knows, this meeting is being recorded, and we'll release it when it is appropriate. If there's anyone that wants to say something off camera, it's easy enough to pause the recording and restart it after your comment. Just make that known. I think your request to make a comment off camera might be recorded though. So we can't anticipate the future. So, all right. So I'm Roger Rail, Chair of CARD and Chair of Sci Residents for Safe Water, and in my 29th year, let's see, watching over this as a citizen volunteer, the Gelman site is a citizen volunteer, and right now I'm having a week off in Holland, Michigan with the whole family. Our first two grandchildren, who were both born during COVID, are seeing each other for the first time and learning, learn how to interact. Who's this? Somebody calling in. So, Jack, you want to go ahead and share the agenda? I'm going to let Beth take over. And Jack, if you want to try to, both you and Mike, kind of keep control of the meeting to move it along. Jack, Beth, do you want Jack to do that while you let people in
That's great.
Do some other things? Okay. And we'll get to the reason that it's Jack in a moment. So again, welcome everyone. If everyone stays muted until it's time to speak, raise your hand if you want to speak. Don't just jump in and say something. And Beth will control that part of it. So that's about where I'm going to be. I'm going to be monitoring this. I might turn off my video. I might be around to listen into the whole thing, or I might have to watch the meeting later and try to jump in when it's my turn on the agenda. So Beth usually takes over this next part with the minutes. Is that right? You want to do that, Beth?
Thank you, Roger. And I'm Beth Collins. I'm the CARD secretary. This is an approval. So I did the minutes. The board, it's a board vote to approve the August minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to?
So moved.
Moved.
I'll
And
second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thanks, Beth.
Minutes are approved. And then the next item, I have a statement to read. Hang on, let me let a few more people in. Okay. 2 months ago, following Jenny Kahn's resignation as CARD's executive director, I agreed to take over as executive director in addition to being the CARD secretary. Since then, with all that's going on with the Gelman site, I realized that it would be better for CARD and me personally to not continue in both roles. I want to remain as CARD secretary and found a fellow CARD member willing to be the executive director. Our very talented and experienced citizen volunteer activist, Jack Eaton. The CARD board met last week to accept my resignation as executive director and appoint Jack as the new executive director. His calm and thoughtful manner and accumulated experience with the Gelman situation and local government will greatly benefit CARD. Thank you, Jack, for agreeing to be the new executive director. Would you like to address the CARD members now?
Well, I'm honored to have been asked to do this, and I hope that I serve the organization well. I'm neither talented nor all that calm, but I will try to carry on as our previous executives have, and I look forward to working with all of you. So with that said, let's move on to number 4 on the agenda, old business. Is there any update regarding the removal of the confidentiality agreement regarding the well sampling data?
No, the first three items there, A, B, and C, there are no updates right now. So as there have, as been in the past card meetings. So I really don't have any new information.
And so if I can inquire, is there anyone within EGLE or the state government in general that we can contact and try to move these things along? Because these have been on our agenda for as long as I can remember, and it's always the same conversation between you and the members regarding the frustration that we have about having no new developments on these three items.
Well, I can answer B and C. The trend analysis and the compliance wells are related to implementation of the fourth amended, was waiting for implementation of the fourth amended CJ. Again, those are part of that. Now that it's in order, that fourth amended CJ is being implemented, so they will eventually be the trend analysis once new monitoring wells and are put in related to that are identified in the fourth amended CJ order. Then we will do a trend analysis to help us develop monitoring plans, to update the monitoring plans related to all the wells for the Gelman site. And as far as compliance wells, again, that is part of the compliance wells are the wells in the western area that are chosen, identified as compliance locations for evaluation of the non-expansion objective in the western area. So we are installing some new monitoring wells, and once those are installed under the fourth amended CJ order, once those are installed, then we will identify compliance monitoring wells related to the new 7.2 criteria, and they will be the ones that are evaluated, that after for sampling to evaluate compliance with the non-expansion objective.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Mike Moran?
Marcia.
Yes, I would like us to stop using the term fourth amended consent judgment because there's nothing about consent in this judgment. So I think we all need to come up with some non-pejorative description that we can use that better describes where we are. I don't know if this is the fourth amended judgment or not. If it is, we can shorten it to that. Perhaps Brian, I don't know if you have a suggestion that might work or not.
Hang on, I had to figure out how to see my unmute button. I've just been calling it the ordered fourth CJ because it was ordered.
So we can refer to it as court's order. Is that a system?
That's fine too.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that's rather important because, as Mike points out, none of the interveners consented to that judgment. So it was ordered by the court, and that's what's being implemented, as I understand. Now, I also understand that the intervening bodies have received confidential advice as to how that is being implemented. Is there any idea of when the public will know when or how this is being implemented? I mean, it's already being acted upon. Does anybody understand when we might be able to view the implementation of this?
I'm not really clear what you're asking there, in the sense that Gelman is proceeding with all the work tasks that are in the order, basically. I don't know if there's anything to quote unquote see generally.
So can you tell us what they've done so far? Because obviously they're not dumping water in sister lakes, but can you tell us what they are doing so far in compliance with the court's order?
Dan
Brian,
probably has a better handle on that.
Well, I was going to ask, yeah, I can do that. I'm just checking with the AG. Yes, I am in contact as the regulator with Gelman. Once the order was put into place by the judge on June 1st, I've been in contact with them to basically get updates on what is being completed. Right now, in summary, right now, a big part of what they're doing is getting access agreements for installation of the extraction wells that are in the Rose Lake IW2 area, and then access agreements for the monitoring wells that are identified in the western areas where they're starting for monitoring wells in the western area. So they've been working on that since the implementation order. That access usually is and has, it usually takes a little longer time at the beginning because it's negotiations between Gelman and private property owners or business owners. So they are doing that right now. They've also done some work plan work. They've submitted last week as required under the CJ, they have submitted a Western area groundwater surface water interface work plan. So we have started the review of that work plan. That is a specific work plan that is identified in the 4th amended CJ order, the order. And that evaluation will include review by our groundwater surface water interface TAPS team, the group of experts within EGLE that we take questions and evaluate GSI groundwater surface water interface work. So I just received that last week. So they have met the goal as required under the order. Submitting that by August 30th.
So is that work plan available to the public?
I have not posted it yet. Will start posting that. I will send it to be posted this week. Again, it is the draft work plan that we received. So we are reviewing it. And so there may be revisions in the future based on that review. The GSI TAPS team meets, the next meeting is the beginning of October. So we will be presenting that to that team and get their comments on it. So like I said, I just received it. I haven't sent it on to be posted, planning on doing that this week. That could mean anywhere from a day or two to up to a week before it gets posted. It's related to the person that I sent to has multiple tasks that she is responsible for. So when she gets the time, she gets it on the webpage.
Mike, Mike, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes,
Mike?
it's on a different question regarding these items A through C. So I don't know if we're through with this discussion yet.
Yeah, that's pretty much one of the other things they did was not specifically in the order, but the order includes Maple Road extraction. And like I said at the last card meeting, they've done a replacement extraction well along Maple Road. They completed that within the last week or so. That extraction well is installed as MW29 and it replaced TW29 and it replaced TW19. So they will get that plumbed into their system, and then that's mentioned in the 4th amended CJ order, the Maple Road pumping. So that they did that related. They have to continue Maple Road pumping. But the main task right now have been the access. They have to have access to get the extraction well put in and the monitoring wells. They are for monitoring wells, like I said, they're concentrating on the western area right now, but they will need access. Are working also on access. Start the work on access in the eastern area for the monitoring wells that are identified in there in the eastern area.
Kathy Knoll and then Josh Mosier.
Okay, Dan, on a clarifying question here, when are you anticipating the access agreements will be available? When do you anticipate the actual drilling or extraction will start? And what's the update on the Npdes timeline?
I don't have dates. I have, we haven't come up with dates from the access because it's so site specific as they negotiate with that. I know the plan is, their plan and what we have discussed is they want to get these access agreements in place here before the end of the year because they want to start drilling and continue drilling for all wells that have to be installed in the eastern and western areas while they have the rigs on site. So they don't want to start and stop. So I can't commit to a specific date when that will occur. They have, but they're, they would like to get started here in before the end of the year and continue on until all the wells are installed. A lot of the monitoring wells are being drilled to bedrock with vertically sampling. So they want to keep the rigs, once they commit, they want to keep the rigs around and installing wells. As far as the extraction wells, they are, again, negotiating. They have to get the first extraction well they'll put in is what is identified in the order as the Rose well / IW2 well. So they are trying to get access in that area. It has been a little slower with negotiations with the where they wanted to put it right next to where IW2 is an existing well that they were going to recondition into an extraction well, but it has been a little bit slower in those negotiations. So I don't have a date for that. The Npdes, there's two Npdes issues. There's a renewal of the Npdes renewal of the current discharge permit for the treatment system into the unnamed Tribahoney Creek. I do not have any updates with that. That has been an ongoing issue. And then there is another Npdes permit that is identified in the order related to First Sister Lake. That is still in the order and that they have not submitted. That relates to the extraction well, the Park Lake extraction well that is identified in the order. And the first step for installing that is receiving an approved Npdes for discharge into First Sister Lake. They have not submitted that. If they don't, if that permit isn't issued, then they are not required under the order to install that Park Lake extraction well. So I don't have a date when, other than they know that's part of the order. It's still in the order. It as currently issued, required from the June 1st order from the judge. And Kathy, I forgot some of the other ones. What other points? There was too many bullets for my mind to.
You basically covered them. There were 3 points.
Okay.
Josh, and then Mike Moran.
Yeah, hi. I'm Josh Mosier. For those that don't know me, acting director of RRD. I want to make a suggestion here. Since Dan just gave an update on implementation of the order, can I suggest that we move? So we're going to be implementing this order, and some people may know that it includes a quarterly progress report. Is that right, Dan? Where government is supposed to tell us what they've done the last quarter.
That
any results, any submittals, anything that's on the schedule for next quarter.
Currently there is a requirement that they are following under the of a quarterly progress report. Yes.
Right.
That
so they have that.
Yes, and that does not. There's something separate that was stayed by the appeals court of additional gatherings quarterly to go through the.
Yeah, I'm only going to speak to what is actually ordered. Yeah, for now. And so we get these formalized quarterly reports that we'll put out on the website also, but we come here monthly, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to suggest that we just put that in the agenda, like under 5 is the, update from EGLE on current implementation. Again, all this stuff will be formalized every quarter in these reports. But Dan is obviously getting a lot of information, as we go month to month here. So if we could just put that as a standing, I just don't see it in here. Instead of trying to mix it in with whole business, can we just put it as a standalone item as an update on order implementation? Just so it's kind of.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Josh.
Yeah.
Do you mean like going forward for next month and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
like under number 5 under updates, that'll be like the first one, and he'll give his verbal update. And again, all this will be wrapped into a quarterly report
That we received from
that
Gelman.
will be on the record, but the verbal updates are important. So I just want to make sure that we just identify here.
And you call it a progress report, right?
Yeah, that's what the CJ order.
Yeah, that's what the order
identifies.
calls it. Yeah.
Okay, so sounds good.
And if you go on, there is currently the second quarter progress report does have bulleted items about the implementation, where it does discuss in summary access, what they're doing, access, some of the same things I just pointed out verbally here. So they've already have one started, and it's posted on our webpage, and they will continue that with each quarterly report, quarterly progress report.
Okay, then Mike Moran and then Rita Locke Caruso has her hand raised too.
I would really like us to come to a resolution on item 4A. Would seem to me simple. All the parties can easily decide whether they're going to agree with waiving or terminating the confidentiality agreement. My sense is there's not much appetite on the government or Gelman side to do this, but why don't we just have an answer? That seems very simple to me. And second of all, and perhaps more importantly, is even if the confidentiality agreement is not terminated or amended, do we have all of the sampling data that has been shared? That's a question that's important, does not disclose anybody's position or otherwise compromise people, but rather gives all of us the data that may be needed for this continuing discussion. So I would hope that even if there's not a general waiver, the parties could agree that if they were in the discussions toward trying to reach a fourth consent to judgment, some additional sampling data that we don't have, that we get it. Thank you.
Rita?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was telling Beth I can't figure out how to raise my hand electronically. Basically, following up on what Mike just said, is an up or down question, and we've raised this in individual conversations that Dan Hamel doesn't necessarily have to answer every question when there's a full party of people from the state on these phone calls. So it was nice to hear from Josh, but I'm curious why the Attorney General. Brian, that seems to me that the Attorney General's office should be addressing item 4A to inform us about what's going on with the consent judgment and with the discussions on that. That's my first point. And the second one is that we've heard discussion from Dan about the western side, but not from the eastern side. And yet it was the emergency order. It was in 2016 that DEQ declared an emergency because of findings of 1,4-dioxane in shallow groundwater and in stormwater drains in Central Ann Arbor. So the interveners report actually did a really good job, I thought, of presenting and exposing some of the inadequacies on the so-called down gradient analysis and what's going on to try to look at some of the solutions proposed in that interveners report. Thank you.
Yep, that's a good question. And I'll let EGLE take that question, but then if we have Evan Pratt with us about the next one, is it D? 4D too. And I know he's like double booked at meetings and stuff today. So when we get through this, if maybe he wants to talk right now about what's happening on the eastern side and at least involving the drain, and he's got some updates.
Well, what is being implemented as far as in the eastern area, what is being implemented is identified in the order. That is what is currently, that's including the monitoring wells in the eastern area that are considered part of the downgrading investigation. That has not been changed and will likely not be changed until information from those new wells, other lines of evidence identify holes or data gaps related to gathering that information. So what is being implemented is strictly what is identified in that fourth amended order. And in that order, there are western area monitoring wells that are identified, down toward West Park in that area. So that's what will be implemented. When we get data from there, then possible additions and related to what is required to evaluate the within the western area, within the eastern area, may be implemented. So I'm, as far as taking suggestions from the interveners work and evaluation of the CJ, that isn't being, we're not changing right now. We're implementing the order as written.
Okay, so perhaps we can move along to item 4D unless there's another hand up. I don't see any other hands. So
I'm gonna raise my hand, just like not virtually, because again, trying to find that button. Just to address 4A, if you don't mind.
go ahead.
Yeah. So what EGLE can commit to is, we'll talk to the Attorney General's office on getting an answer for this on whether we think it's appropriate to move on that item or not, and so we'll have an answer for you by next month.
Well, yeah, let me just chime in is that, the interveners are also parties to that confidentiality order. And they also are in the same position as I am as the assistant AG to seek, a partial lifting of that order. And I would suggest that somebody approach the interveners about it. I assume you guys have, because you often refer to the interveners as your intervener lawyers, as your lawyers, but maybe you haven't, and I'd suggest that be done.
James Damore, did you want to add something?
Not right now. I think Mr. Nagel tentatively answered it. I do share the frustration in terms of the confidentiality agreement. And I think I will reserve further comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. So Evan, you're with us. Thank you for being here. Do you want to tell us what's going on?
Yeah, not a lot to add. Is my audio okay? I'm en route right now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yep.
Sounds good. So we've really covered the topic before. We're planning on taking 2 samples of the groundwater immediately adjacent to the Allen Creek drain. That is pending with Tetratech. I believe has it scheduled. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but we're hoping to get those samples taken in September here in the near future. And I wouldn't expect to see results from that for a little bit. I know it takes a while to evaluate what we're seeing in there. So the key is we want to take those samples adjacent to locations where there's been in-pipe sampling. So we've got something that's apples to apples. So really it's information you all have heard before, but it is progressing. The contracts were signed and the authorizations are all in place and all of that. That's all I've got for the moment.
Does anyone have any questions for Evan in case he has to leave or? No? Oh, Roger?
Well, I was going to put it in the chat, but I might as well just ask it right here. Evan, will the sampling from those Allen Creek groundwater samples, will that be analyzed using method 522 so we can have a heads up if there's dioxane coming, we don't have to wait for it to hit 1 part per billion.
Roger, I'm anticipating that we're going to have sample results well over 1 part per billion. I was not anticipating requiring the method 522, but I will check with Tetratech on that. I can't believe we're going to get a non-detect in these locations.
So do we have a representative from Tetratech on the screen today?
Patty couldn't be with us. Patty might join later, but I do see Allison is with us. Welcome, Allison. Do you have anything to add?
I'm primarily here to take notes for Patty because she had a conflict for the first half of the meeting, but I believe we are doing method 522.
Thank you.
I would like to
Good
ask
here.
a question. I hope these samples will be closer to West Park, not way up away from West Park, as we've had tests up away from West Park and those were non-detect, while in West Park they were, well, at 49 now, 49 part per billion. So I hope we don't repeat what we did before and actually collect new data in this test. Thanks.
Okay, so does anybody else have anything to say about 4D before we move on? 4E is attributed to Patty and she's not here, so we'll move on. 4F is attributed to Dan Bicknell. Is he on this meeting?
No, I don't see him or Diane from the EPA. So.
Okay, so then let's move on to 4G. There's a subcommittee that's discussing openness of our meetings, basically whether or not we're going to post our videos of meetings that we hold. It was held recently. That subject was tabled because almost everybody there was generally in favor of mostly hosting our meetings. No one was there to speak for the other side, and we didn't think we should make a decision until both sides were fully vetted. So we've tabled that until somebody attends those committee meetings to speak on that subject. We did decide during that subcommittee meeting that we'll be working on revisions to the bylaws to make clear that anybody in one of these card meetings can request that we stop the video to have a confidential discussion that won't be posted on the web page. And so that's the report from that subcommittee. Any questions or comments? Let's move on to number 5 on the agenda. Dan, do you have anything to say on these 2 items?
Yeah, I was muted. Number 5A, that's the first time this come up. I'm a little confused, or what's the ask here? It's identify dates, purpose, attendees of any Gelman related meetings held since the last card meeting. I will tell you that we're not going to be doing some type of list as we regulate the implementation of the fourth amended CJ order. We have many phone calls during the week with multiple parties. So we as EGLE, as the regulator, and under the fourth amended CJ order implementation, we will provide updates, as we've said, in the monthly meetings. But I'm not going to do a running list of what everybody is doing.
So I think one of the reasons this is on the agenda is we, after the fact, hear of meetings that the state and the polluter have that don't involve the interveners, and that's a huge concern. We were not dismissed, or the interveners were not dismissed from the case, and we would like these discussions to be more inclusive. That doesn't go to you. I think that that's among the attorneys, and it's a major concern. But also, for instance, at the last meeting, you announced that there was going to be a meeting between, I think it was EGLE staff and Dan Bicknell. And so we're just wondering if that sort of meeting happens just between EGLE and the polluter without the public being aware that those are happening.
A question whether we meet with Gelman?
Yeah.
Without, as the regulator, yes.
Okay.
As a regulator, yes, we do that. We do meet. We do that with any liable party. We meet with them as we implement and regulate the site under, in this particular case, regulate the site under the 4th amended CJ order. So that happens multiple times, and whether it's a larger meeting among staff, EGLE staff and Gelman staff, or whether it's, myself talking with Jim Brody as the primary consultant when I have questions. When he also makes makes notifications when things are happening. For example, the power outage, the schedule for well installation, the replacement well, red pond cleaning, more recently, stuff like that. So that occurs all the time. That's part of the relationship between the regulator and a liable party.
Mike?
Yeah, the difference here is that there are other parties involved, and they appear not to be being included in those meetings. And so the concern that we had is that your practice seems to be continuing along in a form as if there were only EGLE and the polluter at issue here, but that's no longer the case. So are there guidelines that you all have established about when you're going to contact the interveners? Will you contact them at every time there's going to be a meeting? We just don't know where we are here, and we think we should know.
Well, this is Brian speaking again. I'd point out that as of now, the Court of Appeals basically stayed the quarterly meetings or hearings that were going to happen, and the consent judgment ordered does not specifically provide any input for the interveners or any particular say into implementation of the order.
So that seems to mean then that you all are proceeding as if you were the only two parties involved. Is that correct?
We're proceeding, EGLE is the regulating entity under the ordered consent judgment. And that's, how we're implementing. I've had conversations with interveners lawyers on a number of topics and times, just, generally what's going on. But we don't have a formal process. Gelman is not, well, whatever. There's just not a provision in the way the court order currently stands for the interveners to have, day-to-day regulatory input.
Kathy?
You're mute. Kathy, you're muted.
Sorry. I'm concerned about the comments that you just made, Brian, because remember, the interveners remain as parties in the case. The judge specifically stated that, and this new court order does not change that. They were not removed as parties to the action. So I was very surprised to learn that there had been another meeting with EGLE and Gelman, or without the interveners being notified recently. And I've communicated that to our attorney. I will repeat my concern. It's the concern of Scioto Township. We need to be appraised in advance of any meetings. That doesn't mean we're asserting a regulatory function. That is still your job. We want you to do it, but we want to be there and we want to be a part of the discussions. And I thought that was made clear to you earlier.
It's not clear in the order that that's the case.
That the interveners are still parties?
Oh, no, I don't disagree that they're parties to the case. That's what, Gelman is basically saying, with its appeal is that if they are intervening, parties, you need to file their complaints, and then they can address, Gelman can address that, however, but there is not, under the current court order, there is not a role that specifies that that the interveners have a say in implementation of that order. I communicate with them, when, Nathan Dupes calls me, I've, talked to Bill, I've talked to Bob. We talk occasionally and, give them, when they ask, what's going on, and I tell them.
For the last meeting, I know that the Scioto Township attorneys were surprised and the Scioto Township was surprised. So I'll continue this discussion with Bill. Maybe we weren't clear, so I'll just have another discussion today with him.
I'm confused. What last meeting are you referring to?
There was a meeting in late August.
I mean, when EGLE and Gelman speak, are you talking about that being such a meeting, or?
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Because I mean, that is, as Dan's explained, that's the normal regulatory process.
But the interveners weren't informed until after the fact.
I think we all know where we are now, and clearly on the record, Brian has stated his position, which I don't agree with, but it appears to be their position. So I would ask that the interveners take action to clarify the extent of this order, if in fact Brian is correct. So we might be appropriate to ask for clarification or to take further action with the court, because I agree with Kathy, the interveners should be involved. So that's what I'd ask that happen.
Thank you, Mike. Katie Jositis?
I do just want to clarify, since this has come up, Brian, when we spoke at the Debbie site visit, you let me know that all of the interveners had been invited to that Debbie site visit. So do you mind just clarifying what interveners or who was invited to that day?
I wouldn't know if invite is necessarily the right word, but they were informed of it and they had the opportunity to, attend. I mean, it's a public, event.
Well, the only email that we got from Dan was from Dan Hamel that said it would be done the week of the 24th. And there was no details about a date or a visit with Debbie or anything. I went back and looked at least the card core or the cardboard, or, I mean, maybe you sent them out to the individual interveners, but Card didn't know about it.
I don't recall, how, at least I communicated, with interveners lawyers. It was probably over the phone, my guess is, but, I can't, off the top of my head say right now whether there was
you were
email from me or a phone call.
But so intervener lawyers were invited, but not the public or a card activist or. Okay.
This was, Representative Dingell's event, and I think she publicized it fairly well.
We didn't publicize it before the fact. It was a site visit, but I was told that the interveners were invited. So, and to anyone who wasn't able to join her, I know that was a disappointment. But it sounds like it was a lot of, we're realizing now there was a lot of missed communication, and hopefully we'll all be able to do that a lot better in the future now that we've had this clarification.
And just to clarify, Scioto Township was not invited.
So it's my understanding that state representatives received an invitation, but other electeds who serve on the bodies that are the interveners received no notice that this site visit was happening. So I just want to express my disappointment that that it was handled in this fashion.
Well, and the CARD group should have, why would CARD have not been told? I mean, we all live right here too. Like, I don't know.
Well, I'm pretty sure that if our electeds had been informed, that they would have informed CARD, but go ahead, Rolf.
Ralph?
You're mute, Ralph.
I think, am I on now, I assume?
Yes.
Yep.
I'll address this to Josh because obviously Brian appears to be taking the position that the state is going to stiff arm as best they can the interveners because there isn't a specific court order that orders specific things that we're going to treat this as if the interveners really didn't exist. Is that something that EGLE thinks is, as a policy matter, is appropriate on a site of this magnitude and with this much public interest, that you're just going to take the position that this is just like any other site and we'll regulate this and get out of our way, please? Because that's what it appears like, whether you want it to appear that way or not. If you take Brian's comments at face value, that is what the public perception is going to be. And we will make sure that that's what it's going to be. That we've really got a situation here where EGLE just doesn't want the interveners involved, doesn't want the public involved, to accept as forced. And if that's really how EGLE wants to operate, you should say that publicly. If that's not, let me finish. If that's not the perception that you want to have happen, you really are going to need to think about this very carefully.
Let me jump in and explain some of the history of the intervention. And I wasn't a party to the discussions with the first assistant AG when this happened, but my understanding of what I've been told is that the interveners represented at that time that they did not want to become the regulator. They wanted to become involved in the site, and they would not be seeking to take over EGLE's authority under the statute to actually implement Part 201 and any other statutes that are implemented by EGLE. And the statute specifically gives that to EGLE. It does not give an intervener in a lawsuit that sort of authority to just take that over. And as part of the settlement that we'd reached with the interveners' lawyers, at least, that they recommended that their elected officials agree to or accept, was a settlement agreement that had perhaps like a half a dozen key decision points during the implementation, where we would seek input from interveners, and they also had the ability at that time too to go quite a bit further than the statute really provided, and they'd have the ability to institute dispute resolution under the consent judgment. Well, when the judge ordered implementation of the fourth CJ, we all know he did not order implementation of the settlement agreements, or that were separate, and also there was a third, I think it was a release or something on that order that Gelman implemented or entered into. Not, the state wasn't a part of that document. So I mean, where we are right now is basically we are in the normal situation where EGLE is implementing its statutory obligations.
So I think we understand the position of EGLE and the Attorney General's office. Roger, did you have something to add to this before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that when the interveners they don't even have enough information to specify which meetings they were left out of, that signifies a problem. Because interveners have information from the community that could help EGLE do a better job managing this site. And to let just the lawyers decide what's important or what's not, we're going to be repeating some of the same problems that we've had in the past. And the whole idea of CARD was to get everybody on the same page, keep everybody up to date on what's going on. And when there are revelations that CARD members observe that EGLE doesn't have the staff to deal with, that can make a difference in the positive way. And I don't think the AG's office really appreciates that. And certainly I think some of the lawyers for the interveners don't appreciate that. But that's how a lot of the good things that have happened with this site have come about, is because of observations of people paying attention, who have time to pay attention without having to hire somebody to do it. The continuity on this site is going to have to be more rigorous over the life of this cleanup than it's been so far. There's been so many gaps and so many mistakes.
Okay.
I would like to make ask a question based on the updates from EGLE. Dan Hamel had said that he was going to do a test in West Park several months ago. The last test was done last October, and it was 49 part per billion. Strikes the CARD group, I would say, that this should be tested more often than every year, considering it's kind of doubled after each test. And the other, as far as meetings goes, I'm disappointed I wasn't invited to the discussion about about the NSG and the West Park that you had with regulatory officials. Thanks.
All right. I note that Patty McCall joined our meeting, and so I'd like to go back to item 4E and ask whether she has anything to update us with on that.
Sure. I do not. We did not do any basement sampling since the last meeting in August.
Do you have any idea of when any additional testing might be done?
It's based on folks calling us when they've got a rain event that has caused flooding in their basements. In May, I reached out to everybody that had participated, had agreed to participate, to make sure they had our contact info. And, you know, when we started this, we did a survey to make sure we had information that these are, in fact, homes that have flooded in the past. So we do know that that is the case. So it's just a matter of having a rain event significant enough.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I interrupt real quick, Patty? Did you have any update on, since we didn't have Dan with the EPA Superfund update, do you have any update on that with the conflict of interest issue?
Yes, so I found out late Friday that EPA has decided that there is in fact a conflict of interest with Tetratech doing the NPL listing. So I think what happens next, and I'm not entirely positive about this, the START contract, which Tetratech has for Region 5, they are the sole owner of that contract. So I believe what EPA has to do is go to a different region and pull a contractor who's not Tetratech from a different region to bring them in to do the NPL. I think that's the process.
Any questions or comments on either of the items that Patty addressed? Let's move along to
I'm sorry, I'd like to have Dan Hamel respond to my question, please. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dan?
When we're going to sample again?
Right.
Surface water sampling, like I said, I was going to accomplish it here in September or early October. I don't have a date yet. So that's when I plan to go through, do the full surface water sampling, what we've done yearly. As far as doing it more often, I believe you're more interested in the Allen Creek drain sampling, and that will be accomplished under the work plan that will be implemented, moving forward to be implemented related to the MS4 evaluation. So we're not going to, right now, it's not going to commit to surface water sampling more than once a year, unless other lines of evidence indicate that that there is a need for that. We just don't see that need right now, related to the other activities that are planned under the Fourth Amended CJ order and the MS4 evaluation.
Does that answer your question, Vince?
I think with the number at 49 part per billion and Dr. Bob Bailey's analysis that 100 part per billion could be an issue for basements. I think more frequent testing would be appropriate, and I hope EGLE reevaluates that. Thanks.
All righty. And Dan, just out of curiosity, if we wanted to urge more frequent testing, who in EGLE would we contact to try to change that schedule?
It would be our RD here. It would be the Jackson District would started that contact. Myself or my supervisor, Andrea, you could reach out if, I've identified, we've talked about it in-house. We just haven't committed to doing it more often. We have committed, as I said, to do it, once a year toward the end of the summer. So I would say go to, if you're not satisfied, if you want to go above me, it would be to Andrea, my supervisor.
Thank you so much. There was a note in the chat from, I think, Jenny, trying to draw a distinction between the 49 parts per billion being in the drain and not actually in the groundwater. Does anybody here, can anybody here explain to me the significance of that distinction?
I would like to make a comment. Vince Caruso, a board member of CARD and coordinator of the Allens Creek Watershed Group. So there were tests done in the Allens Creek because we could not get permanent wells installed to test for near surface groundwater contamination. Lo and behold, those tests in the creek at 8th Street near Slauson Middle School and West Park came back positive. West Park being 49 part per billion in the last test last October. They did a test upstream of West Park and it was non-detect, and basically showed that contamination was not coming from way upstream, that it was actually pretty close to West Park. And so that's a significant concern that it looks like it's in groundwater. We asked for permanent wells to get better understanding of that, and we could not get those permanent wells installed. So there's where we're at, and it's unacceptable, in my opinion, that we are letting homeowners potentially be exposed without knowing what the levels are in the near surface groundwater. Thanks.
Jenny?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a weird setup for my people. So the Allen Creek drain is an enclosed stormwater drain that contains stormwater runoff. So while there is the potential for groundwater intrusion into that pipe is mostly conveying stormwater runoff. The near surface groundwater samples that have been collected in West Park and the surrounding areas were non-detect. There were some low detections in Waterworks Park in 2016 across from the Slauson School, but the ones from West Park were non-detect. And I know those were a few years ago. I'd like to see them updated. We don't have that data, but that 49 parts per billion was collected from an enclosed storm drain, not from the groundwater outside, which Patty and Tetratech and Evan are moving forward now with testing that shallow groundwater just outside of the Allen Creek drain in West Park and just west of West Park. So we should have some more information soon, but it is a distinction that needs to be made that almost 50 parts per billion was not collected from shallow groundwater.
Well, but let me just ask, I thought that it's not stormwater that's 49 parts per million. I mean, it's not stormwater runoff that's 49. So it's coming from the groundwater somehow into the drain.
Well, we know that we asked for tests when there was drought conditions, and Dan Hamel, to his credit, followed that recommendation. So when those tests were done, there was very little stormwater. If not, the creek behind our house was completely dry for most of the time of those tests. So it was logically groundwater. But the point of fact is we need to do better testing. This is just quick and dirty. We need better, more, and I think there are some proposals to do that. And I hope we move forward on that.
More
I understood,
testing is being
Patty,
done,
is
but the fact is it was collected from a storm drain, not shallow groundwater.
but that's because we're not testing the groundwater, correct?
They are moving forward with doing that. They have well permits. They're moving forward to do it.
So
Yeah, this is an indirect test of groundwater, what we've done. We need a direct test.
I understand that, but Jenny's saying that the tests that would be more decisive are going to be done soon. So I look forward to hearing the results of those tests. Any further comments on this? Let's move along to number 6. Roger.
We lost Roger. He had to reboot his computer or something. So Jack, did Dan, did you have anything new though under what's new under EGLE, or anybody else, Josh? Or,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I mentioned a couple things. You know, we have that Western Area GSI work plan we just got. We're going to evaluate it, and I will post it over the next week or so. Some of the other things, you know, I mentioned the TW29 extraction well replacement for TW19 that has been completed. It has not been plumbed into the system yet. So I will keep you updated when that is done and is pumping and being treated by the system. Some other things, you know, we had a power outage a couple weeks ago that really shut things down for a little bit. That has all been reconciled. The power's back on and the treatment system is up and running. And then there was, during that same time period, red pond cleaning, which is a yearly maintenance activity they have to do. The red pond, there's a red pond and green pond as part of their treatment system. They go in and clean out the biological and sediments out of the red pond to make sure the system is efficient. And so that was completed here within the last month or so. So those are the updates that unless someone has any questions, that's what I had for this month.
Any questions or comments on that item?
Oh, Roger's back. He has his hand.
Yeah, as I texted, let's see, I probably have to change my microphone, right? Let's see.
We can hear you.
Is it good? Okay, good.
That's
all
good.
right. So as I texted Beth, I think my laptop had a senior moment and decided to take a nap. It's not the battery. It's 100% charged, and I'm plugged in and have no, you know, there might be a gremlin going on inside it. Dan, we have the data for, this is really part of what my update, but I want to get it over here before I crash again. What's going on?
I can't hear you, Roger. You're garbled.
You can't hear me?
You're in and out. You're garbled.
me check my audio.
Maybe turn off your video, Roger. Give you better bandwidth.
How's that?
So far, so good.
All right. So Dan, you said that TW29 is installed. One of the concerns I had about that was the location of that and that little island as you go into Maple Village. That in my maps of the Allen Creek drain pipes, it shows that one of the drain pipes going right through that island area. And yet the Allen Creek drain map that EGLE uses on their rockworks is slightly different. Did you have any inkling of why that might be and which one's correct? And I just want to make sure they didn't accidentally punch through one of the pipes.
No, Roger. Well, I don't know why one's a little different than the other. I'd have to check that out. As far as punching through, they got utility clearances before drilling. They would have undoubtedly had been able to determine that they hit a pipe if they were going down through that, something like the Allen Creek drain. So they didn't have any problems during installation. As far as where it's located, they had to get an access agreement for the replacement well from the owners of the Maple Village. So that is the location that was mutually agreed upon. It is approximately from TW19, it's approximately 100 feet or so to the northeast.
Yeah.
So they put it in the same area related to information, historic information of the Maple Road pumping. They wanted to, that is a higher concentration area, so they wanted to remove more mass. So they didn't move it very far, and all those things had to come together to specifically, where they specifically put it. So I don't have any information of why on our map the Allen Creek drain locations are different than information you have.
Was Evan aware of this location before the before the drilling began?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
I just want to say that it's not an uncommon situation for the as-builts to be incorrect and to drill right through various features. For example, in Ann Arbor Township, on a simple installation of a fiber optic, we had somebody drill right through manholes and a lift station and everything else and didn't even know about it or report it. So it would take a direct inspection to really know whether they were followed up and this problem does exist.
Yeah, and this is Evan. I did see Roger's note with concerns, so I'll triple check that.
I'll also remind everyone that the predecessor to CARD, the IPC, came about because of pipeline installation by Gelman from the Evergreen area within the Evergreen area. And it was very clear that the city and the other local units that might be involved needed the information about where things were going to be done so it could be done right. In fact, what happened with the Evergreen area is that instead of having just a single walled installation of a pipeline, that the city had a way to have double walls and have inspection for that pipeline. So when we start talking about pipelines from, say, the Park Lake purge well back to the core, I would remind everybody to use the learning we got from Evergreen to make sure that it's done right, because it turns out the Evergreen pipeline did have a leak. And it's a good thing the city insisted on those inspection manholes. And of course, the pipeline that Gelman bypassed the local units and built from Evergreen back to the core, I think they spent like $2 million for. That one did leak and break, and they had to be replaced. Meanwhile, while that was being replaced, hundreds of parts per billion of dioxin was coming back from Evergreen and re-entering the aquifer there east of Wagner Road. The other question I had for you, Dan, was on TW24. TW24 appears on Gelman's plume maps from the first quarterly report. I don't know if you're aware of that. TW24 was there installed by, what would that be, January, February, March. We already have a July reading, purge sample from that purge well of 1,900 parts per billion. It's a pretty high concentration. In fact, it's the highest concentration from a purge well for a dozen years. And yet that location is outside the plume maps that Gelman's been sharing all this time in between. It's outside the 500 parts per billion. It's between 85 and 500 parts per billion. And yet somehow they knew that they needed a purge well there. What data might they have that we don't have, that's not been shared with the public, with the interveners as far as we know, that indicates that 1,900 was not a surprise? I mean, we assume there's really high concentrations at the core, and we've been asking for more sampling there. But is a purge well the proper way to determine what the high concentrations of an area is? It seems like that should be a monitoring well location. You should have monitoring well locations leading up to putting in a purge well. It seems like this is bass backwards, that you have a purge well that finds this really high concentration. And because it's a purge well, you can't use it for monitoring because it tends to pull in clean water and reduce the levels that are really there. We still don't have a well log for TW24. And it's been months since it was installed. We don't have, was it drilled to bedrock as claimed by EGLE, that after a certain time, all wells are going to be drilled to bedrock? We don't have a recent well drilled to bedrock in that area, where they're sampling every 10 feet or so during the drilling. It's been months and we don't have any of that information. Can you explain why that might be? What's going on with TW24? Can you speak to that?
I can tell you what TW24 is. TW24 was not a newly installed extraction well. It was a rework as of an old well, PM1000, and it is referenced in the fourth amended CJ order. It was not drilled to bedrock. It was an existing well. I will be getting a log and information relating to that installation in a package. I have not received that yet. I have requested that and have been told that will be forthcoming. So they put it in, again, it is mentioned in the fourth amended CJ order. It is one of the phase one extraction wells. There are 3 phase one extraction wells mentioned in that order. It is there was an existing PM 1000 that they made into a new extraction well there and tied it into their system because they were doing some other construction activities in that area, and they wanted to make sure the infrastructure, the pipes, everything was good. So they went ahead and redid the well, the existing well, into that extraction well. That is the information I have. They will be sampling as they do with extraction wells. It will then be part of their extraction system that is required under the 4th amended CJ order for the on-site extraction and treatment.
Now, are you saying PM or
I believe
E?
I believe it's PM 1000.
And what's the significance of that designation? What's the naming convention for that?
I do not know that answer, Roger. That was just a historic well that was in a location that was identified. If you go into the CJ order, the attachment, whatever the attachment with the on-site wells, extraction wells identified. Like I said, there's a phase 1 with 3 wells and the potential phase 2 with 3 additional.
How deep is it?
I don't have that right off the. I didn't go back in and track that down. I did not have a boring log. I will be given a boring log with that package of information coming.
Why is it taking so long?
Why is it taking me so long? I request, and they're putting the packages together. They're doing other things, Roger. So.
When did you request it?
I don't recall when I first, within the last month or two.
But the well's been there since April or May, maybe even March.
Maybe, yep. It was an existing well that they started reworking and putting into their system.
And you say historical well. How far back was it?
I don't know, Roger. I don't have that info. I didn't go back.
If I go back and look at all the history maps that I have, well, what year should I start looking?
I can't tell you that. I don't know. I didn't go back that. I didn't track down that information myself.
Are there other such wells that we don't have well logs for?
I can't answer that, Roger. I don't.
You might ask them that. I'd like to see a map where this showed on a, is this a historical well? I'd like to see a map that shows that. And I'd like to see if there's any other wells that are there that we don't know about. I had some other things on my update, but anything, I'll let somebody else ask you questions on your part here. Thanks.
So Dan, I wanted to ask, when you go down to bedrock, are you sampling groundwater on those wells?
Yeah, when they go on the wells that they're doing monitoring wells and extraction wells, they will be vertically profiling every 10 feet or so and getting that information, and that will be utilized along with the geology described and sediments encountered during drilling to place monitoring wells and extraction wells.
That's great, because we don't have much data down the bedrock, so it'd be good to get more.
Yeah, the bedrock wells will be the wells that are, the new extraction wells except the W24, and then the new monitoring wells are going to be put into place in the western, eastern, and western areas.
Okay, let's move on to number 6 and let Roger take control of this and update us.
Roger, I think he might have stepped away for a minute.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I'm here.
Okay, good.
The reason I'm taking Vince's advice and not sharing my video to keep my bandwidth load reasonable. I'd spent about 2 hours preparing images and bringing up Google Earth and having everything ready to go before I got kicked off. So I'll just say a few words about my notes. There was some activity around MW41S and D, which is out by where Honey Creek crosses Jackson Road. They were clear cutting a whole area there next to the former West Medical Center building there, and on the official maps that shows on the Rockworks map, it's showing that that's where the wells would be for the MW41S and D. So I actually went over there to see if they damaged those wells, because those are pretty important. That's what's the highest concentrations north of Jackson Road before it crosses over to I-94 into areas that South Township properties have wells. And so I had asked Dan to check into that, and he was going to ask Gelman to see if anything happened to the wells. I missed part of Dan's update, so I don't know if when I was off the system here, I don't know if Dan mentioned anything about MW41S and D, but those are very important wells, and I want to make sure that they weren't damaged by that clear cutting.
They were not. They're still there. We went, Kevin Lund went up to them, and they did clear cut and push stuff around, right around them or right next to them, but they're still available to be sampled. And Gelman confirmed that too.
Yeah.
The day you gave me that email, I immediately contacted Gelman, and they went out and checked themselves, and then we also checked within a day or so ourselves. So.
And so they're not right next to the creek. They're up where the clear cutting happened, or near it.
No, they're just down over this, just to the, what direction would that be? That would be east of the creek, just down the hill from the sidewalk. So they're within the woods there, down toward the office building, going to the east. And
those should be pretty. And there you can hear something in the background here. Those. It turns out on the data shows that those the top of casing elevation for those is 8 to 10 feet above ground level. Is that really true?
No, it's several feet above ground level.
But not 8 or 10 feet?
No.
Because that's wrong in the data then. Make a note, get that fixed. The other thing that happened this last month, we got the July Excel spreadsheet from Gelman, and we had trouble opening it. Gelman replaced it, but never explained what went wrong with that submittal. There are some problems with the columns and the codes to say if there was some problems with the data. There's some codes they put in. Those codes are missing. So we never got an explanation of what happened with that submittal. And of course, that is not the data that gets directly loaded into EGLE's database. There's another spreadsheet that has the same information, but in a usable form, that EGLE used to share with me up until this year. So I've been using that first simple report to analyze where the highest concentrations have been since the last submittal. And of course, there were about 10 well locations on that July report that had their highest ever reading. A couple of them were ties for previous amounts, but others were higher readings. And a lot of those locations, of course, are to the north and edges of the plume. Let's see. The March report for us has a system optimization notes under the outfall settings. And it was interesting that even with their ozone oxidation system, for March, we're going back to March now, the 28th through the 31st, were the outfall readings from their treatment system was non-detect to 1.6 parts per billion, which begs the question, why can't that optimization happen all of the time instead of just when they have an exceedance, when they have to? So they did something during that period of time where they could treat to less than 2 parts per billion. And I think the people reviewing the Npds permit need to know about this. Now, it turns out in the averages that bounce back up to 5 to 7 parts per billion. But what were they doing different during the system optimization that they can't do all of the time? And does that affect the bromate levels? Did the bromate levels go down proportionally or go up proportionally? We don't have any information on that during that system optimization period. I already talked about TW29 and TW29, I presume, was drilled to bedrock. So we have, with vertical sampling. Dan, when might we get the well log for TW29?
Again, I'll get a well log, a abandonment log for TW19. I will tell you that TW29 was not drilled to bedrock. They drilled down as a replacement well, drilled down to below the area where they had the well before to confirm a reduction in contamination, but it was not drilled to bedrock. It was a replacement, and they didn't.
That's contrary to Kevin Lund's statement brief to the court. Are you going to update his brief to the court to say that?
I'll have to check in with that.
It said all wells since 2001, I think, something like that, have been drilled to bedrock. And of course, we know that's not true, but it left the impression with the court that wells will be drilled to bedrock. Just make that point. But getting back to TW24, it's really important that we have the information about what led to that 1900 parts per billion found there. We don't know what elevation it is. We think we know the location because it shows on the Gelman's map from the first quarter. And if you say that it's a something 1000 well that was existing there before, it's very curious that we don't have a well log for that if it's an historical well, and we don't have that showing on a historical map. It leads me to wonder who's watching the farm here, because anytime you drill through layers in an area that has high concentrations, you could be introducing dioxane to lower layers. So it's important that everybody who's concerned about that get the information before the damage is done, not 5 or 6 months later. It's good that they're purging from that area. It's troubling that they're using apparently an old monitoring well to do the purging. That we need a lot more information on that. Anyway, that's all I have. Anybody have any questions for me?
Well, here's the thing. If you can't drive in, park on the circle.
Seeing no questions or comments, unless somebody's mute. Let's move on to number 6B. You want to talk about the CARD website? Roger?
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. Oh.
Well, we don't have a means to set up CARD's own website at this point. What we have are SRSW has its own website and has been maintaining that since SRSW was founded in 1995. We've hosted it at different places. Currently, it's still hosted at Google Sites, and Google Sites has a new version of Google Sites we just converted. And I'll be updating the SRSW website with more news as I have time. But we need to get input from all of the stakeholders about what they want to see a website. The county has a new CARD or a new Gelman website, and it's pretty decent. It put CARD as the #1 thing after some advice, but CARD doesn't have control over the county's website. So there's things that we'd like to see for the public to know about, and the other stakeholders to know about, the interveners in that. But we need to discuss as a group, or maybe we need a subcommittee to spend some time reviewing what do we have out there? What do we know about this site? And how do we share it at what levels, and what's the structure of it? I think this would inform EGLE too, because their website also could use some updating. And if we're going to do it, it seems like we should get input from everybody and do it in a way that benefits everybody and not have a whole lot of duplication. What we don't want are 6 websites that purport to tell the whole story, and only 1 or 2 of them get updated from time to time. That's very confusing for the public. We need to have something more centralized, at least until the EPA takes over and does a central website. So that's my statement on that. I'd like to see anybody's or hear anybody's comments about whether they want to be on a subcommittee to do this. So thank you.
Any further discussion on the website?
Just that maybe if anyone is interested in being on a subcommittee, they could email me or Roger, and we'll start a list and see who wants to meet on that.
Yeah, email Beth, or just email the CARD admin group. Maybe. You decide, Beth.
They can email me, that's fine.
Okay.
Right. So let's move on to 6C. The next meeting of CARD will be our annual meeting where we'll have our elections. Any nominations for officers should be received by Beth by September 27th, so that people who can attend that meeting can vote in advance. Do I need-
Yeah. If anyone wants to nominate themselves for anything, they could email me. Or if they want to nominate someone else that has said they would, you check with the other person first. Just email me names. If not, it will continue to be the four of us, other than Jack, because the board votes Jack in, but the other four of us that are serving now will be up for re-election then. And if there's any new names to add, but I have to have them by the 27th so that, and I'll send that to everybody, the card core group, the names, so that you have 1 week to decide. The vote will take place at the meeting. And it's just a simple majority, 2/3 to approve. Thank you.
So equally important, anybody who's on the board now who doesn't want to be should let us know so that this can be taken care of early. So moving on to 6D, Zoom versus in-person meetings. I think it's premature to go back to in-person unless somebody here really feels strongly about this. I don't think we need much of a discussion of this yet.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should continue to do the Zoom. There is a question on there about the election day meeting. It will be a 6 p.m. one if we keep it that. In the past, well, we had a bigger election and stuff last year, but is there any reason why we should reschedule it? Or is it okay with most people to keep it on that day? I know our staff members probably aren't working that day, but I don't know if they object to, or they might be working in elections, but any comments or questions?
Alrighty.
We'll just keep it the same then. Okay. We're keeping it on the night of the 6th. And even if we have just less people, it'll be recorded. So you guys can watch if you can't be there. Thank you.
So then moving on to item number 7. The Ann Arbor City Council will be holding a September 13th work session to discuss the source of city water. There are 2 possibilities. One is to upgrade our current water treatment plant. The other is to buy water from Detroit. The city staff strongly recommends upgrading our water treatment plant. For some reason, they are offering 2 resolutions for city council to consider. One of those resolutions would be to further study using Detroit water. I think this would be a fiasco, but we need to pay close attention to this. Does anybody have any comment on this?
And she only does it, she will only focus on it when there are,
I think the option of abandoning Barton is important to the city, but also the townships, because if they need water at some later point, they may have to tap into Detroit if it's what Ann Arbor does. So I think the townships, as well as the city, need to pay attention to this.
Good point. Rita?
What time is the session?
7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes. And that link that I put in there has some good stuff, like how not sustainable it is for the 820 to tie into Detroit. And I know that the pumps that just failed in that last flooding circumstance, and just the chemicals added to get the water to us, they have to treat it a lot more because of bacteria and stuff. So yeah, that's all I have.
Any further comment? Oh, go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I think it might be wise to think about that in the distant future. But like Beth says, there's a lot of extra chemicals they have to add to get Detroit water to us without it being, so still drinkable. And Ann Arbor water is quite good water, and we want to keep it that way. and also those of us in Scioto Township that have wells and in Ann Arbor Township that have wells, they're not anxious to be annexed, to have city water and then be annexed to the city. And then, you know, have even more hookups that have to be supplied water. It's better to just get rid of the dioxin, and then you don't have to worry about this, you know, getting alternative water. And remember, there's other things that, you know, PFAS can contaminate Detroit city water too. You know, the Lake Huron is only, you know, the retention time for Lake Huron is about 22 years versus like 2.2 years for Lake Erie. It's and there's enough. Gelman used by itself used enough dioxin in its 20 years that had it been released in one day would have contaminated all of Lake Erie to detectable levels. And PFAS is 1,000 times worse than dioxin because it bioaccumulates. So we don't know how much PFAS is on its way to Lake Huron. So you can't just hope for, you know, that Lake Huron is going to be the answer to water supplies. We need to be better stewards of the water that defines the shape of Michigan. And, you know, we should be setting standards for how to do water cleanup and protect our water supplies. I was talking about retention times for bodies of water. What do you think the retention time is for groundwater? You know, if it takes 2.2 years for Lake Erie to be flushed out and 22 years for Lake Huron and 180 years for Lake Superior, what do you think the retention time for our groundwater is? Think about that. There's parts of groundwater in the deeper pockets that have been there since the glaciers. Do we have to wait for another 10,000 years for that to be flushed out? So I'll leave you with that thought. I'm actually in favor of cleaning up the water and not trying to find other sources of water. We saw what Chelsea had to do. They had to have a building moratorium for a year or more when they didn't have enough water supply. And the amount of water that Chelsea needed, that's using, is the amount that Gelman is pumping, partially treating and throwing away. And here in Michigan, where we have way more water than our share, that shouldn't even be we shouldn't be getting to those points. We don't want to be like California or Arizona. We want to have water for forever here, good clean water. So
Thank you,
that's all.
Roger. James?
I need to dash off fairly quickly. I just wanted to comment. I will likely have a conflict next week, Monday, I belong to a state committee with the Sierra Club on equity issues, and we have a conflicting meeting that night. I just want to state for the record for any representative of the city, I don't know if Kathy Griswold is still here or not. I do hope that the city takes into account the staff recommendation of not moving forward with the Detroit water consideration in terms of the issues that Roger brought up. And I do believe it is not sustainable under the 820 plan. I hope the city just moves forward just simply with an Ann Arbor only solution with the issues that Roger outlined clearly. My one final comment to the state of Michigan representatives here and to Brian Nagel, please treat the interveners as equal partners here moving forward and coming a good solution with Gelman. We should not have to have a second place and encourage to be involved in well. And with that, I bid you all good morning.
Thanks, James. Mike?
You mute.
I would just like to end this where I began this morning, and that is to come up with a substitute phrase for CJ4. Dan Hamel, I know how hard it is, having used CJ4 for years now, to substitute a new one, but I would ask that we all just adopt the date of the order. And Brian, did you say that was June 6th or something?
I heard someone say June 1st.
June 1st.
Okay, great. I would appreciate it if we could all try to use the June 1st court order. Thank you.
So I do want to make one further note about the work session. Work sessions are confined in time, and so there will be public comment time at the end of the meeting, and that typically starts at about 8:45 for a work session. If you wish to implore the city council to take one course of action or another, that would be a good opportunity. If, like James, you're not available to be there, you can just send an email to the entire council. It's really important that they hear from as many people as possible. All right, so October 1st is the Autumn Green Fair. CARD will have a booth. Somebody should sign me up, however that works, and I'll be there. And anybody else who wants to volunteer should let, I guess, Beth know. She'll keep track of us all.
Yeah. Sounds great. The more the merrier. And we will be using the posters that we've all used before, I believe, right? Is this the time to announce that?
Yeah, basically, we don't have, we always have some things to educate the children about how much water there is and how the water cycle works. And for the adults, we have some plume maps. We probably don't have a current plume map because one of the things I would like, and maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, that I really like the Rockworks, the first draft map that the EGLE has. I would just like to have it exportable so I can bring it up on Google Earth and do a more proper comparison as it gets updated and enhanced over time, so that it's easier. It's good to have a couple different platforms like that, but at least they should be able to talk to each other. So think about that. And if anybody on the map team is still on this, I don't know if Kevin's still on the map team, even though he's been transferred to a different department, but I've been reaching out to them to try to set up a meeting because I have some suggestions. Having done, having done information systems that interact with the public, I have some suggestions about how to make the map system even better. There's some layers that need to be included. There's some corrections that need to be made. And the updating for that should be a routine standard operating procedure. It shouldn't have to be a special project, assignment. It should be an ongoing thing, and it should be as simple as possible so that it's almost automatic. And I have inputs that it should probably help that system. But with that, I'd like to have a visualization at the Green Fair that shows the Gelman plume maps that I've been using for SRSW's Google Earth displays. But I also want to have EGLE's Rockworks modeling superimposed on that, so everybody can see where there are gaps in the modeling, and so that they aren't surprised when something else happens. We've had too many surprises in this site, and the more we can share available information, the better off everybody's going to be. We're going to have better solutions and fewer surprises. So. All right, that's
that's, I think that concludes this. The next meeting is October 5th at 6 p.m. If I could get the executive board to stay on Zoom after Roger turns off the recording, I want to chat for just a moment.
Okay, and Jack, if you want to go ahead and close the agenda, I want to see who's left at the end of the meeting here. Stop your sharing, in other words. Yeah. Just wanted to have some idea who was left.
Thank you, everyone. We didn't run over today.
By the way, let's give Jack a big hand. And everybody else too for keeping us on schedule. One of the goals I had when we talked about having Jack take over and Mike do more of the process control was to let's try to get this meeting down to like an hour and a half, especially if we end up having to go to closed session at any time. Having it go beyond 2 hours is way too much stress on everybody. And a lot of the stuff we wouldn't have to discuss if the information was forthcoming, if we didn't have to say, well, what about this stuff? And, you know, how much of the time this meeting was talking about information that we should have already had instead of asking for it again. I mean, think about that. So anyway, great job, Jack.
Thank you so much. Okay, you can stop the recording, and if the board would say, I'd appreciate it.
I'm going to
Hey,
stop the
Roger, one correction. It's not PM 1000, it's PW 1000. The on-site 24, remember I was talking, I called it PM 1000. So
That makes more sense.
PW 1000.
The word
yeah.
well is in there. Yeah.
I just, for some reason I had PM in my head.
So are you saying T as in Tom, W as in what?
P as in Paul, W as in well, 1000. And, you know, it's just, it's basically just north of, just across the road from the red and current red and green pond.
Yeah. I'd be interested in seeing the history of that well.
I haven't put that together. I will get a package of the log and everything once here soon.
And why it wasn't on any of the recent maps. Anyway, all right, I'm going to start recording.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Everybody.
Thanks, guys.
We're not. I'm going to stay on, but the executive board is going to have a little. Thanks.
All righty. Thank you.